Hey everybody, welcome to SOFcast. I'm your host, Master Gunnery Sergeant Chance Stanley, and I'm joined today by my good friend and colleague from the Joint Special Operations University, Mr. Mike Lundstrom. One of the cool aspects of working here on the program at SOFcast is we get to interact on a personal level with so many amazingly talented, driven, and passionate professionals that continue to give back to the SOF community in unique and positive ways. Today's guest is no exception. She's got more than 12 years experience working with SOF teams in the realm of cognitive performance. She holds multiple advanced degrees in exercise science, kinesiology, and she earned her PhD in educational psychology. She's also the current director of ECHO, the Elite Cognitive and Human Optimization Program. Join me and Mike as we venture into the realm of human cognitive performance with one of the foremost experts in the field. Without further ado, Dr. Brittany Loney. So what we really like to do here is sort of figure out what your passion or your drive, where do you derive the goal to get out of bed every day and do what you do, especially with the military community?
Oh, that's a phenomenal question. The passion for the community it's deep because I've always wanted to work with people that I respect, and there's nobody I respect more than those who serve. But me in this field started way before I think I ever realized that, and I had a lot of head injuries when I played basketball. The women were pretty feisty. I got my head jumped on. Literally, I was trying to get off the court and someone jumped on my head to keep me down. So I had a lot of head injuries that gave me brain damage. And my senior year of college, I actually had horrible head injury that led me bedridden for a few months. I got anterograde amnesia, which is the inability to form new memories. Severe emotional control issues. My knuckles show it. I put my hand through many walls. When I would start laughing, I couldn't stop laughing. When I would start crying, I couldn't stop crying. So what I learned to do was not do anything, and just kind of remain very stoic and show no emotion because I couldn't control them. So there were a lot of difficulties that happened there, and my coach at the time saw me going through this and changed my life. I was studying to be a defense attorney at the time, and I was in criminal justice, and my whole life I thought that's what I was going to be. And when she forced me to see a counselor, and at first I was like, no. I was an arrogant 21-year-old athlete who's like literally said many times, that stuff is for people who can't physically hack it. I was that person in the room, I think why I can also relate to that person.
Sounds
in the
like
room.
You could have been soft.
Yeah. I've encountered that person in a room many times, but I was that person, and my life changed when I went to the counselor, and he said, hey, I really think you'd like this mental training stuff. And I was like, no, I don't think I will. You must not know me very well. Well, he's like, please, just try it. And I was like, fine, that's the least I can do. I have nothing else going on. My life is crap right now, so fine. I went and researched it, and I fell in love with it. It filled such a deep void that was missing when basketball was my identity. It is who I was, and my whole personality changed with the head injury. So I was looking for myself, and I think I found myself in this field. And I used a lot of the techniques on myself, and that's where the passion came from, because I saw that they worked, and my brain was coming back. I went from not being able to go to sleep before a test. Literally, I couldn't go to sleep. I'd stay at IHOP all night and just keep drinking the coffee. And then I made sure I'd had all morning classes so I could go straight into class, take a test, and then I would go to sleep. Because once I went to sleep, I lost my memory. So when I started doing these techniques that diverted around a lot of my brain damage and they were working, I was like, whoa, like this is insane. And then it just became a passion from there. And what led me to SOF, I had actually tried to join the military, every service. I was denied by every service for obvious reasons. It wouldn't take me either. But no, my actual brain injuries were the reasons that they gave me. So it was something I always wanted to do. I was in JROTC all through high school. Like and I loved it. Like my uniform was always creased, and like I just gravitated to the community. So it was devastating when I got turned down by everyone. And when I was in grad school, I went to a conference, and at the conference, there was people there who worked with the Army, and they're like, "You can do this with the Army," and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" Like life changing from that point. I left grad school early. My advisor was not too happy about that. He tried to convince me to stay. He's like, "You'll never finish." I did finish. It took a long time to finish, but I did finish. And yeah, that's just when my life changed, and I got assigned to Fort Bragg right off, and I got to work with a phenomenal team there, led by Maureen. I won't give last names because I didn't ask for permission, but we had a great team. Cece was on there, Mary Rose, a lot of others who are, still help the community or work in the community. So yeah, and then it was just, that was everything to me. It became life. And the older I got, the more important it became to connect to people. I think when I was young out of grad school, it was like, let me have the solution for you. And then the older I got, I was like, let me just connect with you. And what I've found that the solution comes from the connection. And I don't have to have all the answers. I'm just there to walk alongside people sometimes, and we find the answers together.
So when you were at USASOC, and then you were part of the Thor 3 program, is that correct?
Yeah, so quickly after working within SWIC, I moved over to be the first embedded cognitive performance specialist within a Thor 3. And I was at third group a short time, but third group will always have a piece of my heart. I absolutely loved working there. But then I was requested to move on from that and stand up another cognitive performance program.
And for our listening audience that might not be familiar with Thor 3, that's the Tactical Human Optimization Program. I think it's a rapid rehabilitation and reconditioning. So I'm a MARSOC Marine, right? So we have a Perez program, which is performance and resiliency, which is akin to that.
Yeah. Hey, so interesting. I want to dig into maybe third group or some of your time at USOC a little bit. Do you have, just to kind of put a little bit more context to what this means, do you have a vignette or a story you could share with us that was maybe near and dear to you, or maybe that had a breakthrough moment for that individual?
Yeah, I'll first share the breakthrough moment for me, because I think that's important to the story about the individuals. When I was first coming on a third group, it was probably my first week, the chaplain was in the gym working out, and he took me to the side and he said, "Hey, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care." And I internalized that so deeply. And I probably err more on the side of keeping my mouth shut in most situations and like just let people come to me, which is not always the right answer. But that moment changed my approach overall. And some breakthrough moments with people, I mean, they were all their moments. I was just lucky enough to be, by their side and involved in some way. And many of it revolve around them valuing themselves enough to put not themselves first, because I don't think this is a community that will ever put themselves first. Absolutely. And you sign up to serve others and you're willing to die for it. So you're willing to be unhealthy for it. But it's, I think it's when you internalize out of the impact you're having on your team. And I think it's when I see people make the shift of, I just need to be better for those around me. But then also how good they feel when they invest in the foundational behaviors. They're getting more sleep. They're connecting to people deeply. They're not withdrawing. Their nutrition's on point. And then their cognition. And really what we do in cognitive performance and the transformation happens is we look at where you are now and who do you want to be? How do you want to be? What purpose are you going towards, and put everything in alignment. I think that's really what we do. And when you see people see it all click and just live their life in alignment with their values and their purpose, and their behaviors follow that, and they're doing it for their team and their country, I think that is just like, it's incredible. So there's really not like one individual breakthrough, because I've seen a lot of people have breakthroughs, but it really happens when they suspend any ego and they're vulnerable enough to say, here's where I am and here's where I want to be. and I want someone to help me close that gap. And then we're just here to help show them and reflect the mirror and say, here's what you're doing that's helping, and here's what you're doing that is hurting. And when you get to see somebody feel like they're cared for and truly connected with, those are my favorite moments. When someone respects me enough to want me at their graduation. Little things like that, those are the moments for me. Not any like, oh, I helped this person do this or that. They did all that. Like, I was just there to help them get in alignment with that. But I will share one story culturally. It's not one individual, but an organization that I worked with that really internalized everything we did. I saw them take their culture, and we mainly worked within their training pipeline. And in that training pipeline, there were a lot of things that were counterproductive to a learning environment. And
it's called military training.
Yes. and I understood why they were there. Yeah. I think you also have, like, a lot of times people want to come in and shine a light and be like, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong. Like, I understand why they were there and it made sense, but I don't think it made sense for where they wanted to go. And to watch an organization completely let their guard down and say, we just want to improve this process. And they fully opened their doors to our program. And they said, what do we need to be doing? There's leadership, people leading from the ground level, those first adopters. And to really see a culture change, like, that is rewarding, to be a part of a culture completely changing, because that takes a long time and a commitment by a lot of people to row in the same direction. So being part of that culture change, I think, was probably one of the most transformative aspects of my career.
Yeah, changing a culture, if winning is behind it, it seems to want to change quick. We tend to do that very well here in our. So there's probably two things I want to get into a little bit with this, and one is neuroplasticity and what that, working on that, what it can do for us. And then we talked about a little bit earlier, which is the foundation, but we'll come to that later. Tell our audience a little bit about neuroplasticity, how it works, how we can increase or improve ours. What things can we do?
Yes. So neuroplasticity is really why cognitive performance, I think, exists. If there was no neuroplasticity, I think our field in and of itself would be pretty ineffective. And neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change itself. And when the brain is more plastic, I think it's heated up, it's moldable. I call these the accelerators. These are things that heat up our brain and allow us to learn and mold ourselves. And those accelerators include sleep, movement, nutrition, living purposefully, connection with other human beings that's deep and meaningful, a growth mindset. There's a whole host of other things. Our chronic stress levels, keeping those in check. I'm never an anti-stress person. I think a lot of times people think cognitive performance of, oh, they're going to help me reduce my stress. We're just going to help you optimize your stress so that when you need it, it's there, because it's an incredible survival mechanism. Like, why would I want to work against that? I just want to work with it. So I think helping people shut down, I think that's incredibly important in this environment. You all are so good at operating under stress, but that's also your vice and your kryptonite, is that you like it too, and you feed off of it. And I think helping people shut down in the evenings and, if they get a day with their families, truly being present and not have their minds at work, I think that's, our field has been used quite a bit to help people in that way. And then the decelerators are pretty much the opposite of everything I just said. Not getting sleep, not moving around, getting poor nutrition. It's like throwing coolant on the fire or water or whatever analogy you want to use. But many times, I think of performance as, you have people in a crew boat and they're all rowing, hopefully in the same direction. But when you've got some of those coolants or decelerators in there, you've got a couple people facing the other direction rowing against you.
Boat anchors.
Yes. So I think of, like, look at those decelerators and how can you kind of turn them around, or at least take the oar out of their hand so they're not rowing against you, and get everything in alignment to achieve that neuroplastic state. Because once we get in that neuroplastic state, we can actually change the brain and do some pretty powerful things, with decision making and memory and situational awareness, quite a few things. But we can't forget the foundation.
Yeah. So if I wanted to increase my neuroplasticity outside my work, what activities could I do in that accelerate side of it, right?
Yes. So number one would be get at least 7 hours of sleep on average if you can. You can have days where there's not and weeks where there's not, but the context should dictate that, not your habit.
Right.
So I would say is look at how can you improve your sleep. Let's say you can't get more sleep, because I do know that's the case sometimes. It's like, all right, then how do we make your sleep better quality? And it's by having a PM shutdown routine. Having something consistent every single day that you do to shut down mentally from whatever it is you're engaged in, and treating it as a dimmer versus a light switch. So start winding down 30 minutes to an hour beforehand. And some of those things can be breathing. I love 4-7-8 breathing. You do a 4-second inhale, 7-second hold, and an 8-second exhale. The exhale is what brings out the relaxation response. So we want a longer exhale and really relax on that exhale. So 4-7-8 breathing, having good nutrition before you go to sleep. You can also, there's a ton of nutrition recommendations to actually enhance your sleep. So you don't have to take melatonin or anything like that. Tart cherry juice is one of the most often recommended.
Never heard that before. That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, tart cherry juice has the precursors to melatonin. So it's a more natural way to get your melatonin versus by pill. You can potentially reduce your body's ability to produce its own melatonin when you take pill form. Not 100% proven, but that's a theory right now. So it's think about what you're eating and trying to actually have nutrition that supports sleep. You shouldn't work out within a few hours of trying to go to sleep. So I often ask people, can you get it anywhere else? If you can't, how can we really have you shut down after your exercise so that your nervous system can more easily go into a sleep state? Binaural beats is another effective thing where you get it to a more of a sleep state. You adjust your brain's frequencies based off of what you listen to. I'm also a fan of alpha stim. There might be a lot of people out there who disagree with me on that. You put it on your earlobes and it sends an alpha frequency back and forth between the two electrodes, and it gets your brain more into an alpha state. And I actually think that's why there's a high prevalence of alcohol use in the community, because I think you all are in high beta mode, which is this thinking mode a lot. And alcohol actually automatically puts your brain into this alpha state. So, meditation can get you there as well, but the community likes quick fixes, and alpha stim is a pretty effective one. At least won't hurt you.
So alcohol gets you the same benefit, huh?
No, not benefit. No, it gets you the same brainwave state.
Yeah.
Yet it actually doesn't let you go to deep sleep. It will prevent your deep sleep from the rest of the night. You might pass out, but you won't get a quality night of sleep.
Yeah. Then you get into a perpetual bad habit.
Exactly.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I've got a question for you. So we've all heard, elite athletes talk about, being in the zone, right, where everything is just clicking. I'm a car guy, so I use the analogy of firing on all cylinders, right? But I think of that as being sort of a balance where I've got all these stimuli, I'm managing them well, that stress, right? I'm handling it. I'm able to process the information at the rate that it's coming in, and I'm staying on top of it, right? So, again, I'm sort of in the zone. I'm just on it. If I'm, maybe on one side of that, maybe I'm tired, I'm groggy, I haven't quite warmed up yet, right? And on the other side of that, I'm overworked, I'm overtaxed, I'm burned out, right? So, and you can feel that way after a really grueling workout or something like that. So what are some ways in the vein of what you were just talking about that we can sort of stay in that balanced peak mode?
Yeah. I always say when it comes to flow moments, because everyone chases flow, I think it's a practice state where we don't treat the days differently. If you treat every day and try to be at your best every day and do the things that will produce that every day, then you don't have to do much to produce flow.
Literally
You're kind of
like
living
the SOF mantra, right?
Yeah.
Be better tomorrow than you were today.
Yeah.
So.
But sometimes I think being better than you were today, there's an antiquated way many people go about it, and they think it's just go harder, work harder, just more, where sometimes it's back off and reset. So what I would say is don't really approach the days too differently. If you have all your rowers in alignment for this neuroplastic state, that's also going to be the state where you can more easily achieve a flow state, because you have a good foundation. And then before that moment you want to be great for, you have a routine that you have practiced quite a bit that it's like a stimulus response. When you do that routine, your mind has been conditioned to produce this state. And you can never say, well, this routine 100% produce a flow state. No, you can't do that. You can increase the probability that you will be in flow, but you can't say 100% anything will put you in flow. All you're doing is raising probabilities. And much of it is actually looking at how you perceive the resources and demands for yourself and for the environment that you're in. So if you're going into a moment, let's say this podcast, we'll just use a pretty simple example that's here for us right now. If I want to be in a flow state coming into this, and I think I know everything, I'm going to be fine. Like, you won't get the best out of me because what I perceive the demand to be low, and I have all these resources where I'm just going to kill it. And what I don't do is prepare myself adequately or demonstrate enough energy and passion and authenticity and all these things I want to bring to the table. But also if I go the other way and I think, oh my goodness, like, I've never done this and I'm going to suck and I'm talking up the demand, and then I've never done this and I've got no resources to meet this demand, then I'm actually going into the state where I think, oh crap, I can't do this.
Set yourself up for failure. Yeah.
Exactly. So what you want to do in every situation is see, yeah, this is going to be challenging. This might suck a little bit too, but I have all these values that I have trained over time, and you kind of return to those. I just want to go in and be the best person I am. And that's easy. Like, you practice it every day. Let me do that. So it's matching your perceived resources, who you are, the skills you bring, your values, your attributes, all of that, skills too, and perceiving the environment to be of an equal demand. Like, yeah, it will be hard, but I got it. I'm going to bring it all to the table. When you match those up, you start to match up your skill and challenge levels. And most flow moments occur when your skill and challenge levels are roughly equivalent. So
that's interesting.
I think that's why SOF emphasizes, repetition over and over, and we train not until we get it right, but until we can't get it wrong.
Yes. And I love that aspect. And the thing, when I've seen sometimes what will happen though is you start to do mindless repetitions. And
There's a point of diminishing returns. Yeah, 100%.
Is like in those, it's staying extraordinarily present in what you're doing. It's not overthinking it. And that's another thing with flow states. You're not concerned about the outcome. You're concerned about the process and the systems that reproduce good outcomes. And that's where your focus is. Once you get consumed by the outcome and wanting it to be good, great, whatever, you can still want those things, but that shouldn't be your focus before going in and during those things.
That's pretty interesting. Let's get to where we can optimize the things you were talking about. And listening to you talk before, you talked about the foundational piece of what it is to get cognitive performance, our circadian rhythm. So if we're going to maximize our day, how do we look at that? When's our peak time for performance? When's our low points? How do we mitigate those? Things like that.
So I'm going to speak purely from cognitive performance because there's a different way to leverage your circadian rhythm if your goal is strength and power and you're competing in something like that. So from a cognitive standpoint, 09 to 1300 is going to be your best time to be able to perform mentally. You should have your complex tasks during that time. Your sync meetings should not be occurring during a 09 to 1300. That's usually the biggest mistake I see.
Guilty.
I always see that happen in a room, like, right? Look around. Yeah. Those should go during your dip if it's an informational sync, that, simple thinking. So it's protect and guard not only your prime time, but also all those who are around you. If you call a meeting during prime time, you really should, you just took everyone's prime time. There should be good reason. Now, it doesn't mean you shouldn't have any meetings during that time. They should just be more complex thinking. This is maybe where we do our strategic planning or plan for the upcoming mission. Those should happen in the morning. So it's not that people can't get together in the morning. It's just make sure it's the complex thinking that is occurring there. And then also you want to mitigate your dips because you still have to work through those. We don't get a siesta here. The 13 to 1500, you're going to have a natural circadian dip. And it actually is bigger for those who wake up early, which is the community. So when you wake up very early in the morning, then your dip is going to be lower and longer. So one of the best ways is to have your movement or your exercise occur during that time frame, or at least go do a brisk walk outside. Get sunlight. That will help you sleep better later on as well. You want to make sure that your meal is balanced. It's not too big. You're not taking in a ton of high fat or high carb. And I'm not recommending low carb here. I'm just not recommending like taking in all the carbs that are available at the restaurant or in your lunch that might be there.
Big pasta bowl.
Yeah, not recommending that. What happens, all the blood gets diverted to your gut and it takes away from your brain. So the resources come from somewhere and they're limited in your body. So if they're going to your digestion, it's taking from your brain. And it means you still should eat. I don't want people to think, oh, then I'm just not going to eat and I'll have no blood in my gut. It doesn't work like that. Your brain operates off of glucose, so you have to eat.
So it needs that bagel in the morning.
Yeah. Phone a friend, help dietitians.
Yeah. I know. You're not a dietitian. I got it.
Healthy, natural foods, non-processed. There we go.
Not enriched flour. Yeah.
So get your movement, good nutrition. And if you still have to do some complex thinking during that time, I would say make sure you have a really good movement break right before, because if you have a good movement break, you will get about 4 hours of positive brain changes, and there is no pill on the market that can do that. So movement has extraordinary effects acutely on our mental performance, and then also over time, it actually makes our brain bigger. So yeah, that's what I would do to mitigate the dip, and then in the afternoon, I would use the ultradian rhythm a lot more, those 90-minute sprints, 20-minute recoveries. If you can't get 20, get 5 minutes. Just get something to top off the tank a bit. You cannot fight biology. It's a biological rhythm. You're good for a 90-minute sprint, and after that, your mental state is going to get scattered, and it's going to take you longer to complete things. You might think you're saving your time by not taking a break, but you're actually extending the duration of everything that you're doing that comes thereafter. So a 5-minute break can actually save you time because you're going to be at a better state to complete those things. And in those breaks, you could do non-sleep deep rest, especially if you don't get high quality sleep. It won't replace sleep, but it will have a lot of the benefits cognitively in that moment.
This seems like, history has taught us this. Afternoon tea time, siestas.
Yeah, history's taught us a lot of things. We just don't listen all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that about actually like how we manage stress and whatnot. I'm a huge Stoic.
Okay, yeah.
Huge Stoic. I like all philosophies and I like bringing them together and looking for the commonalities. And General Fenton actually really wanted me to talk about the 5 critical perceptions. I shared them with him and he was just like, wow, that is hope. And it really comes from all these philosophies. We've known these things for years. We've known a lot on performance psychology for years. We don't consistently do these and we justify existing behaviors that we think are leading to high performance, but simply they're undercutting us. But we want to keep justifying it. And at some point you have to take a hard look in the mirror and draw a line, not in the sand, but in the concrete, that's not going to move, that says, I am not doing this anymore. I know there's a better way to do this. And that's where we come in, is to, here's the better way. So I do want to share those 5 critical perceptions.
Please do. Yeah. I was going to ask you if you didn't.
And these came about, and there's a lot of personal stories around these, and not just philosophy. I am a huge philosophy nerd. I'm just a nerd. And I call them like meta beliefs, and they're belief systems that it doesn't matter, religion, faith, anything. I think they're common. So the first one is here now, and it's presence. A lot of cognitive performance has focused on presence. And when you talk about flow, you have to be present to get into flow. It's a requirement. If you're not present, if you're thinking about the past mistake or even the past success, and you're just not in the moment. If you're thinking about the future or the consequence, you're not in the moment. So it's stop mental time traveling and put yourself here and now. Those things will be there. They're there. You can visit them later. when you're not in the moment needed for high performance. So I would say it's really putting on lockdown this mental time traveling. And I really put this one into practice recently. My mom has been in the hospital in and out. And it didn't look good for a little bit. It was pretty serious. And I had learned these, and every day I literally have in my app, I have to do these perceptions. If I don't do it, I can't block it off. And I had to stay in that moment and not think too far ahead. If I thought too far ahead, that hasn't happened yet. Like, I would think about her death and what am I going to do, and like start catastrophizing and planning for these things. And it's fine to plan, but there's also a point where it becomes counterproductive because you're not here in the moment. So for me recently, being here and now was extraordinarily important, and just catching that mental time traveler and taking him off the little DeLorean and putting him in the moment. So that's here now, incredibly effective, but not always practiced.
Important for leadership to be in the here and now.
Yes.
Certainly during crisis.
Oh, how many times they have to shift, and the shifts are like, they're going from, a president of one country to, something internal that's going on. And then like, they're just drastic shifts.
From up and out to down and in.
Yeah.
And back.
Within 5 minutes. So yeah, you have to practice presence. You can't expect presence when you've never practiced it. So that's why I think these are daily practices, all of the ones I'm going to give. So yes, here now, not just for leadership, but everyone. As is. And this is seeing the world truly as it's occurring, without adding your inference in your story about all the things that are coming about. And this one, actually, I shared it in the talk earlier today. Great example. I was laughing really loud. It was early in the morning. I was in the cadre pit, and one of the course directors just slams his door. And I was like, oh, man. Yeah, I really bombed that one. I upset him. And I told there's two facts here. The fact is I was laughing loud. The other fact was he slammed his door. What we naturally always do in every situation is connect
Cause
those.
and effect. Yeah.
Yes. And it wasn't at all. And that's, I apologized later. I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, I was trying to close the door and I fell out of my seat. And I was like, oh. But always we are a hero or a villain in all of our stories. And most of us are villains. There's some arrogant people who are always their hero. But we connect individual data points and we put ourselves at the center. And we need to learn to step back and just like, all right, what are the facts? And sometimes I'll even write this down in my notebook, and I'll put out the facts, and then I'll draw what my inferences are. And then I'll ask myself, what other inferences could there be? What other stories could I be telling myself? So as is stripping inference. As granted is probably the most near and dear to my heart, because this is what got me on my journey to come up with these 5 critical perceptions. So my brother struggled quite a bit with addiction for years, and I was always kind of the one who tried to help him get sober, went through some tough times of someone coming off of, you name the drug, it was in his system. So the most serious ones. And I went through that for years, and a lot of my colleagues, they can probably remember me going through that. And at one point, it was a New Year's Eve, and I still have the post. I decided I didn't handle that well. And I'm supposed to train people to do this. Like, I could have been a better me. And my friends were like, well, but this, that, you're in a hard situation. I'm done with excuses. Like, I think we have to be done with excuses at some point. And that's where I say, draw the line in the concrete and be done with it. And that situation taught me from that day forward, I was like, I am going to do and be better no matter what. Like, I don't care about the excuse. I don't care about the situation. All I care is if I try to show up as my best self every day. So that led me to amor fati, which is in as granted. It's taking life as it's been granted to you. And amor fati comes from Nietzsche, and the Stoics also practiced it. And it's a love of your fate. The world is happening the way it will. Stop fighting reality and actually love that everything is happening for your benefit. And even the bad things. And it was like, wow, how could my brother going through that have been a benefit to me? But when I reflect, it has. It transformed informed how I have chosen now to live my life. And it's to not accept anything but my best effort. I fail a lot at I'm never perfect, but I will tell you every day I try to show up with my values and my virtues. So I think taking life as granted is hugely important. And one saying that helps me with challenges that come my way is OMS, and it's not the yoga OMS, it's OMMS. Obstacles make me stronger. And it's internalizing that. Every time a bump in the road comes my way, small or massive, when my mom went into the hospital, I was like, obstacles make me stronger. I'm going to learn something. Man, my brother's situation, that transformed me. Imagine what I can learn now. And it's just coming to every situation like I can learn from this incredibly hard thing in front of me. It can make me stronger. It doesn't have to break me. It will be hard. All of it is hard. Life is hard. And when my brother went through that, one thing I knew was guaranteed is more times like that would come. Like, may not be him relapsing. I wasn't, wishing for that, but I prepared myself for his death. Like, literally, mentally. That's what I just dove into everything because I was scared he was going to die. And then I also realized if he doesn't, I'm going to face loss and struggle in my life. Like, it's just guaranteed. We all do. And I just wanted life to be a little less painful. And I call it the 3 arrows. Only one we have to take, but we tend to take 3. The first arrow is our anxiety before an event. And it's an arrow that we self-inflict. That's the first arrow. Then there's the arrow of true life. Something that happens, a loved one passes away, we have a hard situation. That's the arrow we have to take, and it's painful. Like, it's not saying like we're not going to have pain. And then there's the third arrow. The third arrow is the rumination and the worry and all the things that we as human beings do after the fact. So you only have to take one arrow in life, and I ask everybody, is like, how many are you taking in this situation? Are you taking it before? It's never even happened. And are you taking the arrow after? And what we work to help people do is just take one arrow. And it could be one arrow in performance. You made a mistake and you need to move on. Or it could be much larger than that if you experienced a lot of loss. And it's hard. And it's not pretending it's not. It's, all right, now what do we learn from that? And how can that inform your life going forward? So that's as granted. And I also call it the inverse paranoia. And a paranoid person thinks the world is transpiring to hurt them or against them. An inverse paranoid person actually thinks the world is transpiring to make them better. Like, I choose that. Like, we get to choose which one. I'm going to choose to live like, yeah, all these things may be happening, and I wouldn't choose these things. Like, if someone said, hey, what life events do you want? Like, I'm not going to choose, I want my brother to struggle with addiction. Like, or I want my mother to be in the hospital, or I want friends to die. Like, nobody chooses that, but it's how can we choose that life is transpiring to put us in a place we need to be, and it just for lifelong learning. Then we have release, and that's releasing attachment, mistakes from the most micro level in performances, and then from the most macro level of I have regrets. And there's a book called The Power of Regret, which if you do feel regret, and I think a lot of people in this community do, because there's a lot of moral injury that's happened, the power of regret really flips it on its head, and it's not a comfortable emotion, but it has a lot of power in motivating us and mobilizing us. And how are you using that regret? Are you shaming it and yourself, or are you claiming it? And just, how do I use this to move forward? And then lastly, effortless action, which comes from a Chinese philosophy of Wu Wei. And I added virtuous in the middle, effortless, virtuous action. And Confucius actually believed we have to cultivate the state. And I believe that as well. So every day, I would say for everyone out there is, what are you doing every single day to live as your best self? Now, we were brought into the environment and into SOF to help people perform at their best when it matters most. I think we need to help people be at their best all the time. And sometimes at your best means taking a break, because performances shouldn't be too different than reality. And if we're doing these things every day, we don't have to treat the performance much different. We've instilled these, we can deal with them. They're kind of now on autopilot. So effortless virtuous action is about what you're doing every single day to bring yourself closer to your best self in your energy, in your work, and with those that you actually love and appreciate in your life. So sorry, that was a little long,
that's
but
amazing, because I didn't realize how closely tied some philosophy was with cognitive optimization, right? But just reflecting and thinking on pondering how you interact with the people around you and situations and life in general goes a long way towards your performance.
Yeah, I say every moment you're training, and that's through your habits and your reactions. And you can't expect your performance to be different than you are every day. If you tend to react to a driver who cut you off and you just explode and it ruins the rest of your day, how can you expect to move on from mistakes?
So I like to say that you don't get to choose like the event, what's happening, but you do get to choose. You have a say in how you react to it.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, it's that black box that Viktor Frankl actually talked quite a bit about. Between stimulus and response is a space, and we need to own that space. And many times when we don't own that space, we fill that space with justification and excuse. And when you do own that space, that's true. And I'm going to steal a term from Brian Johnson. He came up with the heroic platform and app that I just love. He calls it responsibility, like response ability. And how are you training that every single day? And one exercise I do for myself, and it really is a game changer, I call it counter awareness. And I literally carried a counter. I can be pretty extreme and intense. And I carried a counter, and every time I had a thought that was against these 5 critical perceptions, then I had to click the counter. I didn't have to change it. I just had to click it. So for 1 week, I just counted how many ineffective thought patterns that I had. And what that did, I'm competitive. So what do I want to do? I want to bring that count down. So you start figuring out how you bring that count down, and you literally, through counting and just measuring, you start to change your beliefs. And I do it every time I need a reset. If I find myself going down a bad pattern, I'll bring the counter with me again, just to, all right, let me get serious about this again. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things I want listeners to take away from. Cognitive performance is not a one-time thing. It's not a one-time workshop. It is everyday deliberate practices. And they don't have to take much time because you're already doing things. It's just taking control of how you're going about doing them and the reactions and responses that you have in situations, and getting really serious and relentless about what you let yourself do and how you let yourself respond.
So there's a skill. I think we're talking around it,
yeah.
Right? And that's that ability to be introspective, to be self-reflective, and to be honest with yourself, right? To me, we can all say we do that, but that's a skill, right?
Yeah.
And you obviously, I think to get to those things, you have to do that, right?
Yes. And I think that's probably a key takeaway is you have to approach this field and what we do with humility and an openness, because you can't get to the level of self-reflection to truly be at your best if you're not willing to be vulnerable with yourself.
Yeah, it goes back to the story you talked about, the organization that just let their guard down, let everything down in order to make change.
Yep, no more excuses.
Yeah, if an organization can be a learning organization, a self-reflective organization, they're going to be much more effective and change when change needs to occur. It's amazing. I'm going to shift you a little bit. There was one more thought I'd picked up from you in the circadian rhythm. And I think the third part, and correct me if I'm wrong, was the reboot.
Yes.
The later hours of your cognitive performance.
Yes, 1500 to 2200 time frame. We have a bit of a cognitive reboot because our body temperature goes back up due to our circadian rhythm and hormone levels. So when all of this is impacted by body temperature, and the higher the body temperature, the faster your brain cells transmit. So when it's too high, though, for cognition, it can be a bit overwhelming, and we don't have the optimal clarity. So in the afternoon hours is actually when most world records are broken for sprint and power sports because of that fast transmission. So if you do want to optimize your circadian rhythm for strength or power, then yeah, you want to optimize your afternoon because that's what's going to get the most out of it there. But from a cognitive standpoint, it's really good for vigilance and alertness. not necessarily deep thinking, but if you need that attention to detail, then that afternoon time frame, our brain cells and everything is pretty biologically primed to be able to do that well. However, you still are fighting the cognitive fatigue from earlier in the day that builds up. So you do still need those resets in there so that you can still have the ability to have that level of attention to detail.
And what are some of the things we can do for resets?
Yeah, so
toolbox.
It would be adhering to that ultradian rhythm, that 90-minute sprint with a 5 to 20-minute reset and recovery. And the same recommendations kind of keep coming up is this movement, get around, do a brisk walk for 5 minutes, let your eyes see the sunlight, because when your eyes see that sunlight, it changes the neurochemistry pretty quickly. So let your eyes see that sun, have walking meetings if you can. I know a lot of meetings can't be in this venue, but many can be. What I find if my colleagues just start chatting and it's like a discussion we can have open, like, hey, let's just go for a walk then, because we're going to take the time. So let's just get walking so that we can be more productive when we get back from this.
The command run, right?
Yeah. And it would be like, if you are a runner, I would recommend doing it. Like if you have a big problem you need to solve, don't look at it as taking time away from that. I often will put a problem in my head before a run, and then I have it solved by the end, and a lot faster than if I would have stood there at my desk and trying to just work through. It's like sometimes we need to detach from our desk to actually be able to think more clearly and save ourselves time. So I would really think about for yourself, all right, what are the things that work for me personally? Is it a walk? Is it a run? Is it sunlight? Is it meditation? Because that's another thing you can do. The NSDR scripts, again, the Reverie app is really good for those type of scripts. Also setting your binaural beats, wearing headphones and having a 40 hertz going, because that really primes alertness. So those are kind of the tools, but you also have to think, what really is the thing that works for me? And then what am I currently doing that is actually making all of this more ineffective? And
counterproductive.
And it's usually a thing that's just a cultural norm of people don't leave their desks. It's like, well, why? When we think better away from it, like some of it's impression. And I think we need to be honest with ourselves is what am I doing for impression versus what am I doing to perform highly? And I think leadership has to realize that not all the problems will be solved at the desk. Many of them are actually solved away, and giving people that space away from the desk, many times will get you the answer sooner. So it's thinking, where do I think best and how can I replicate that in my environment as much as possible? And I know sometimes you can't.
Some of the stuff you were talking about reminded me, I had a former commander, and he used to go for his afternoon runs, and he would bust into my office all the time, and he would be like, I had a thought. And I'm like, you've been exercising again, haven't you? And of course he would come in and drop some knowledge bomb on me, and it was really a do out is what it was. And a mentor that I had throughout my career, he would say sometimes people look at how long you spend at work as a metric of how passionate or how driven you are, how committed you are. So the earlier you get in and the later you stay, right, the more effective you are. And he said, that's not effectiveness, right? If I can accomplish in 8 hours what you take 12 to accomplish, who's the more effective? And that's always stuck with me over the years. So you might have to reevaluate your measures of performance, measures of effectiveness.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because that reminds me of an analogy that one of the guys I worked with before had provided me when I was brand new, and we're talking about productive organizations and whatnot. And he compared productivity to land nav. And when you get lost during land nav, most people want to keep going, right? But what is the most effective thing to do?
Reorient.
Reboot.
Stop and reorient. And that's the most effective thing to do cognitively, is realize when you're just doing for the sake of doing and to be seen as doing versus am I progressing? Doing does not equal progressing. Just like moving in land nav does not equal getting closer to your point. And I think taking that same mental framework of am I doing right now? Am I more worried about impression right now? Or am I actually progressing on the critical things that matter and the end state objectives? And I fell into that culture. I will tell you that, that's probably my kryptonite is work long and hard and never stop. And I need to hear my advice a lot. And I have other people coach me to make sure I'm truly living this. Because I'll be one of those that wakes up at 4:30 and doesn't stop until like someone makes me go to bed, and it's not effective. And the culture that I was in kind of reinforced that culture. And yeah, it was just not a good situation.
It's important lesson as leaders as well. Just because you start your day at 3:30 in the morning and you don't go to bed until 11 o'clock at night, 2300 for our military listeners, right? Doesn't mean that everyone in your team has that same capacity, right, to operate at that optimized level. So, the old adage is you're only as strong as your weakest link, right? So it's just understanding the talents that are within your team and leveraging them to the best possible outcome, right? Whatever that is.
Yes, and there's only like 0.001% of the population that can operate effectively, optimally, not just get by. I think that's what most people do, on 4 to 5 hours of sleep every night. And it's a genetic mutation. It's not something you can train into. And I think some leaders might have that, but then they expect everybody else to do it, or they're living that and people are watching and they're saying one thing but doing another. And people are going to do what you do, not do what you say. They'll watch that for what should be the behavior they should be doing. So yeah, I think it is monitoring. What are you reinforcing through your behaviors, and could the entire formation live that and be optimal? I think people can get by, but I think with the complexity of the world and those we're going up against, and I think we have to be at our best, not just get by. So I think we really have to be serious and look inward organizationally, and then also as individuals to think, what am I reinforcing, and could everybody be optimal doing this?
Yeah, we don't want to run a sprint everywhere. We want to run the marathon, right? We want to run the long game, the long run. So it's amazing. Hey, it looks like we're getting close to the end of our time here. What is the one thing you want our audience to take away from today?
I would say that cognitive performance is not easy. It is an everyday practice. It's a discipline. It is relentless, and it's being relentless with yourself. But I can guarantee it is 100% worth it. And it works. The techniques don't come from, out of the blue or a Google search or anything like that. It is taking the principles, some as far back as Stoicism in those days, but others as recent as, what's yesterday's research in a given area. These professionals bring that all together for what works in this context. And I think it is having the openness and humility to say, I want to get better. Here's who I am now. Here's where I want to get. Allow the professionals to help you get there. They may not have all the answers, but they can walk alongside you and you can be guided on that path versus just going down the path that you think works. I love the quote, what got you here won't get you there. A lot of times people say, well, it got me here. It must be working. And it's like, yeah, but that might not get you to the next ridgeline that you need to be focused on. So I would say trust it, trust the process. Have that humility. And if you don't do it for yourself, do it for those who have to serve alongside you so that you can bring your best self to the fight. Because again, you guys sign up to serve. So, taking care of yourself many times can go against that value or feel like it does. So I would say if it feels like taking care of yourself is selfish, it is also the things that produce the highest performance. Luckily, they're in alignment. Well-being and performance are really well in alignment. It's how are you for your team? And who do you wish to be for them? Where are you falling short? And where are you actually just really doing well? And how can you just build both of those up and keep bringing that best self to the fight every day? And for the practitioners, I do want to put something out there for them. It is be humble, be open. We don't have all the answers. We have a lot of answers in our field. We don't have them all. And I say the program that I've been a part of and helped create was crowdsourced. And it was crowdsourced by all the people I worked with, all the operators, the soldiers, service members. So it would be allowed to be crowdsourced. It's okay to be wrong sometimes. And just show up and care about people and connect with them authentically. And it's not about you. It is about them and their mission.
That's awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Absolutely amazing. Well, Dr. Loney, on behalf of General Fenton and Command Sergeant Major Shorter and the entire SOCOM team, I just want to thank you for taking your time out to come and visit with us today, especially in person. Thanks for sharing your insights and your expertise, and mostly thanks for your continued passion to serve the SOF community. We really appreciate it. For our audience, thanks for joining us today. You can check us out on Apple Podcasts, across all the social media platforms, or drop us a line at SOFcast@SOCOM.mil, especially if you have a comment on the content or a recommendation for a future guest or a future topic. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you on the next episode of SOFcast.